Hello everyone and welcome to Now You're Playing With Power, a Nintendo podcast. This is episode 35. My name is NBZ and I am sat in a chair talking to my computer screen. But that doesn't mean I'm alone, because of course, as always, I'm joined by the ever-illustrious co-host of mine. It is Bally.
Hello, and I'm also sat by myself looking at a computer screen.
It's one of those weird things about being a creator on the internet. More often than not, you find yourself just talking to a screen. And it can be weird at first. I certainly found that, when I started making videos. It's a strange feeling, but you get used to it.
Yeah, I found it pretty weird when we started this podcast, almost a year and a bit ago, a year and a half, not quite. I don't think.
Not quite, but
yeah. No,
used to it.
I've been raiding your house today, NBZ.
That's right. Do you want to talk a little bit about that before we start the show?
Yeah, so I'm up in Edinburgh just now. NBZ is across in Bonnie Glasgow.
Aye, pal.
Aye, pal. And there's a couple of games that were in NBZ's possession. Pikmin 2 and Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D, to name a couple. And basically, I went round to his house, went up to his room, and stole them from him.
Yeah, you basically just daylight robbery.
Exactly.
And I was none the wiser, apart from you just tweeted me a picture of them and were like, look at me, I've taken these.
Look at me, I'm robbing your house.
Although, admittedly, Pikmin 2 is your game, which I had borrowed,
yes.
so you're just reclaiming it for yourself. So
reclaiming it to
fair go, I say, fair go. Alright, before we kick into the show proper, we have got to lay out for you guys what is going to be going on. So, Bally, how about you let us know, what are we going to be talking about today?
As usual, we've got what we've been playing, we have a few emails, and then for our third segment this time, it's been a hot topic recently. We're going to talk a bit about virtual reality and maybe mention a few things that were shown at GDC, what we think about it, maybe what Nintendo's role might be in it all. Lots of talking points.
Absolutely, we have to talk about Nintendo in the context of VR, because, it's an industry-wide thing, but we have our focus. Actually, at the end of the show, we are going to have a special announcement, an exciting announcement regarding the future of this podcast. So, if you are not going to listen to the whole thing, we can go and listen to the end at least, because there's a thing that needs to be said, and it will be there. So don't go anywhere. But if you're a good guy and you're a good girl sitting there listening, then keep trucking, and you'll see some light at the end of the tunnel. So there you go. So yeah, all right. Let us, I guess, begin this podcast. So Bally, you've been playing video games as per the usual.
So many.
Literally this time, that's actually an accurate statement. So why don't you go ahead and tell us?
So I'll quickly mention that I've been continuing Fire Emblem. I ploughed on through a couple more chapters. It's getting tougher, getting a few more characters. Really enjoying that. And then also I thought maybe I should buy a brand new Game Boy Color game on the Virtual Console for my new 3DS. But then I thought, why would you buy this is my ethos these days. Why would you buy a new game when you have games to play? Like, this is the backlog issue. So I thought, you know what? Let's play a really random game, Mario Bros. Deluxe, which is a re-release of the 1985 classic Mario Bros. For the Game Boy Color.
Done your homework there,
Yes, for the Game Boy Color in 1999.
Oh,
yes. Wow. So we got this game free. I think everyone, was it just Europe or the whole world got this game
I can't remember the circumstances surrounding why this was given
out
free.
I don't even know why I got this free, but either way, I got this game free from Nintendo, and it's a good fun game. Everyone pretty much knows my stance on 2D Mario. It's no better. I wouldn't argue it's any worse, really, and it was a good fun. I abused the hell out of those save states on the harder levels, and it took me an hour or two to complete. Had a good time. Another one backlog ticked off the list.
Well, I think it's interesting to talk about because it is the original game, but reskinned this time on the Game Boy Color. So it looks like a bit more appealing, I find, than the original NES version, which I kind of think is kind of bland at this point. And doesn't look that great.
And they really improve the menus, and for example, after each world they have like an overworld map like they have in Super Mario World.
That's interesting. That's 3, cool.
Which that's a nice little touch they've added.
Yeah, because literally in the original you just go level to level. There's nothing in between.
Exactly, and it's quite dry. So the sprites are a little bit more improved. The colors are just a bit better. The one downside is that the screen is narrow because it's for the Game Boy Color. It's not widescreen like an NES.
Yeah.
Even if you could call an NES widescreen, but I think you know where I'm going with this. So yeah, you can't quite see far enough ahead of you for certain jumps, but you can press the Y button in this version and look ahead of you. So it's not ideal.
Do they retain the idea of once you've gone forward, you can't go back? Because in the original Mario Brothers, once you scroll the screen far enough off, you can't retreat to an earlier thing. So if you miss a question block, for example, you can't scroll the screen backwards. Is that a thing there, or is...
I have a feeling you can go backwards.
All right,
actually.
well, that's good because
so yeah.
it was an annoying design choice, I think, in the original. So.
But yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk a whole lot about this game. It's fun. It's fine. If you've never,
I mean, everyone knows what the original Mario Brothers is. So.
I know. If you've never played the original, I would maybe argue it might be a bit more fun to play, especially if you got it for free from Nintendo. If it's just sitting there on your Game Boy, sitting there on your 3DS, I'd say give it a bash. It'll only take an hour and a half, 2 hours. The save states work a charm. So yeah, had fun with that. And then to use more of the new 3DS's capabilities in the 3D, I thought, and you've been nagging me to get this game and its sequel for ages, NBZ,
Absolutely.
and that game and its sequel is Gunman Clive and Gunman Clive 2.
Yes.
I really didn't know what to expect with this game. I knew you absolutely loved it, but I kind of thought maybe it's just one of those games that NBZ absolutely loves, and it's a good game, but it's not as amazing as he suggests it is. How wrong I was, because this, both 1 and 2, I can't decide which one I prefer. I think 2's probably a bit better. It's a bit longer, a bit more challenging, a bit more vibrant. There's a lot more different worlds and far more color.
And a lot more of like mechanic variation in there as well. Like they throw in, as I said before, the kind of Star Fox-esque plane levels, which are awesome. Like it's a really great use of the 3D.
Yeah, those are really cool.
And you know, you're using like there's one point which I never mentioned, which is like you're in a minecart, like going on the back of dinosaurs, and I thought this is fucking cool. This is really like a neat out of the box idea, and loads of crazy great stuff in the second one.
And like you're traveling across the world, like it's an actual map of the world, which is quite cool. Whereas the one before, it's just set in the Wild West, I assume. But and this game starts in the Wild 2, I should say, starts in the Wild West, but. Just in general, Gunman Clive, I mean, Johnny Metz talked on RFN about how he thinks it's a solid game, but it does all the individual things it goes for, it doesn't do any of those individual things in any special way. And I would completely disagree, because I think stuff like the art design, the music, I mean, I go on about these two all the time, don't I? On this show,
well, you know. Wouldn't be a show if Bally didn't talk about how pretty things were and how nice they sounded.
Exactly. The art and music are amazing in this game, and I'm not just saying that this time because it just looks beautiful.
I mean, the wonderful thing about the art style is it's so unique. It's this sketchbook thing that he's gone for, and you know we've talked about this before. This is one guy who's made the game aside from the music, and it just works so excellently with the 3D depth.
And there's such amazing other simple things like the sound effect. What you had a great word for it.
Sound design, I guess.
The sound design, and sort of when you fire your gun, you really get a sense. First of all, that you've shot the bullet, which is one like it's a feeling you have, and then you have to have that other feeling based on the sound design that your bullet has hit the target, and just. Both the art and the sound design in relation to that act of shooting an enemy is just so solid.
It's really like the concept of
feedback is the word.
But it's also this concept of game feel, which is a concept that Ego Raptor, a very famous animator on YouTube, he used to be on Newgrounds. He often talks about, like in his sequelitis videos, about game feel and like the raw kind of feedback you get from the art and the sound and the use of the controller all at the same time. It's this one kind of encapsulating thing, and I think that that is very present in Gunman Clive 1 and 2. So.
And I mean, we've recommended loads of different games on this show, not numerous times. I guarantee you, pretty much every single game we've ever mentioned in the past is more expensive than these two games. Because if you own a 3DS, honestly, and this is coming from me, who's took ages to download these games, they are so cheap, and the playtime. The first game took me about an hour 15, an hour and a half, and then the second game took me about 2 hours 15 minutes. So they're very short games, but I honestly couldn't recommend. I think they only cost like £2.50 each.
The first game is
They're
£2,
really
second is £2.50. You can get a McDonald's freaking lunch meal for more than that. So I would say skip your lunch tomorrow, buy these games instead. It will be worth the investment. No doubt about it.
Honestly, fantastic games. I was so impressed, and it'd be really nice if a third one came out at some point.
I'm interested also because, you now have played Mega Man 2, and, Gunman Clive is very influenced by that kind of design philosophy, and, you can now appreciate that, which is great, so...
Yeah, and I think it's a far more solid game in its mechanics than Mega Man 2, mainly because it's so much newer than Mega Man 2.
Right,
But yeah, just that action shooting 2D platformer, it just does it so well. And I'd say the first one is a pretty straightforward game. The second one, there is definitely really challenging parts.
Absolutely. I didn't really get to talk about this, but I think the final boss in the second game is fantastic. It's one of those things where it combines platforming in the boss itself and is so ingenious and really smart. So, yes.
And there's so many stages of that final boss as well that it's not just platforming final boss. There's also, the standard guy on a screen, dodge out the way and shoot sort of thing. And yeah, it's really great game. Really, really. I completed both these games just traveling on the tube to work in London, and those journeys were an absolute joy. Like near the end of the day at work, I'd just be like, right, ready for the tube. Here we go.
Looking forward to your journey back.
It's a really, really great little pick up and play game. Really, really pleased with it. So yeah, that was Gunman Clive 1 and 2. And then this list just keeps on going. But I also played and completed Mario vs. Donkey Kong for the Game Boy Advance, which came out in 2004, I believe. So I was playing it on the Ambassador program.
So just, one more on that list of Ambassador games that you are pretty much getting to the end of now, so...
Almost. The only two games on it I've not completed are Minish Cap, which I've not even started, and Fire Emblem Sacred Stones, which I'm going to get back to after Fire Emblem 7, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, I really didn't know what to expect. I knew it was a puzzle platformer. I did not realize the amount of emphasis there would be on platforming above puzzle. Now, don't get me wrong, that there are still some tricky puzzles in this game, but the amount it relies on you to platform your way through these levels is huge. And unfortunately, this is also the game's greatest flaw.
Yeah.
Because, NYPPQuestions, you've been playing this game along with me, and this game expects you to do more than you're able to do with the tools you're given. So you're expected to pull off these incredible platforming feats, but you're not given the relevant platforming tools to do that. And by that I mean it's just not great game mechanics in terms of the platforming design. It just doesn't feel right.
Imagine, if you will, dear listener, that you are presented with a steak dinner, but the tools with which you have to eat this steak dinner are 2 spoons. That is what Mario vs. Donkey Kong feels like. It feels like they give you these challenges that require a level of precision, but you do not have any control over precision whatsoever. And it's kind of frustrating, quite honestly. Now, when you started to play this game, I was like, you know what? I've never played Mario vs. Donkey Kong. It'll probably be quite short. I might as well give it a go. So I sat down, and within one evening, I'd blasted through the first 4 worlds, and I was like, hey, this is fun, I'm enjoying it. At that point in time, the game hadn't asked too much of me. The puzzles were simple and fun, the levels were short, you could blitz through them pretty quickly, and as a result, within a couple of hours I was done with 4 worlds, and there were only 6 as it seemed on the menu initially. So I was like, you know what, yeah, I could probably just knock this one out. And then I got to World 5. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I broke. I broke as an individual and as a gamer and as a human being, because fuck me, the stuff they ask you to do, the difficulty spike that occurs is unforgivable and contributes really to me having a very sour taste in my mouth about Mario vs. Donkey Kong, where the game could have done much better in terms of, the pacing and the way that it was structured, in terms of the difficulty, but it didn't, and made me very angry. So.
And, yeah, there's also another 6 worlds.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really tell you about those 6 worlds until you've completed the first 6 worlds.
It's kind of the Super Mario 3D Land thing, but back in 2004 when they made this game, which is weird.
Yeah.
But the difference there is Mario 3D Land is a joy to play, and I happily went on to the next 6 worlds of that. This, not so much. And, me and you were talking about this, because RFN had this discussion on completing games and, going for the 100% in a game. And my philosophy is, I feel very similar to like Johnny Metz, where if something that you are enjoying and you continue to want to play, fine, go ahead and 100% it and finish everything, all the content that's offered to you. If you're not enjoying it, be done with it and move on to something else, because it is not worth wasting your time over for no kind of feedback or reward whatsoever. And that's how I felt with Mario vs. Donkey Kong. I got to the end of the 6th world, finished the final boss, who is just... We can talk about him in a second, but
it's not the final boss. Oh my god.
No, of course not,
He
right?
was tough.
But like the credits rolled. As far as I'm concerned, the credits rolled, and that's it. That's the end of the game for me. It opened up this extra stuff. That's bonus content for people who want it. I didn't. And I left it be. And, that's fine with me. Mario vs. Donkey Kong, it was fun while it lasted up until that point, and then I was like, well, fuck you, game. I'm just going to finish you for the sake of it. And I don't think it was really worth it, but at least I can say I kind of beat the main game at a minimum, So.
I mean, the only reason I ploughed on right till the end is because I like to see every level of every game. Now, I'm not saying I like to 100% games, because I think that's slightly different. That can involve collectibles, etc. But I like seeing every level of the main game. Now, main game is the wrong word, because you just described the first half as the main game, and I kind of agree with you on that. But this post-game section, you don't have to do anything special, in my opinion, to unlock that post-game. So for me, it was basically like, right, here are all these brand new levels, and I need to emphasize that these 6 worlds, the levels within those final 6 worlds, are far shorter. We've not even mentioned it yet, but the mechanic of having the mini mechanical Marios, I should say, following Mario and then getting to the end of the world, sort of like a Lemming style. That's the format of every single level of the final 6 worlds. Now, I felt that basically I don't have to collect everything to get to these levels. I just have to play these levels. And I thought, you know what? The game is offering me these levels. I want to see all these levels. And I did have like a good time playing through all these extra levels. And the bosses did get progressively more challenging, more frustrating. And I'm not going to lie that a lot of those bosses weren't much fun. But I was up for putting up with those tough bosses in order to see all the levels. And I feel the big difference between something like that and something like the hidden levels in a game like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, for me, is that you have to basically go on a massive collectathon to get all the extra levels in DK Tropical Freeze. Now, I'm not denying I'm not potentially keen for that, but it's not a massive urge to do that for me in the same way that getting to the end of this game was, because I felt like there were all these levels up for grabs that I would just be missing out on. And basically I wanted to see 100% of the levels that didn't require, collecting, etc. I don't know if I've worded that well.
I don't know. I want to do like a count of how many times you said the word levels in that entire spiel you just did.
Levels.
Because I feel like it's quite high. Beep boop, beep boop, beep boop. Hello, this is editing NBZ. Bally said the word levels 15 times. Now back to the show. But I think something that was holding me back even more from finishing that final world was the mechanic of leading the mini Mario through was really weak in my opinion, and again, like, hard to control and to get it right, especially, leading up to the final bosses of, the first 6 areas. You basically, your life points going up against the boss are based on how many mini Marios you save, and generally that can give you a huge advantage or disadvantage depending on how well you do in those. And it can be really frustrating because some of these levels are just designed in such a way that, like, you're guaranteed to lose these Marios again and again and again, and you're going to have to, like, basically go through it perfectly in order to reach a good vantage point when you're going up against Donkey Kong. And the prospect of going through another 6 worlds where I have to lead a sodding Mario through a level again and again just felt like murder to me. Like, I would rather stick knives into my eyes than go through that torture, because that shit was obnoxious.
And that is an area I disagree with you on, because I did genuinely enjoy the challenge of those levels. I completely agree they didn't handle the best, and the mechanics, we're completely agreed, are just flawed.
Yeah, the thing is, it's just the platforming stuff feels so heavy. Mario himself is unwieldy. He doesn't control in a way that feels satisfying, When it comes to platformers, I want to be able to think, I have a good degree of control in the air, I have the ability to control my momentum. Mario feels stiff, unwieldy, heavy.
Yeah.
Gravity feels like it's weighing down on your shoulders, and that is not a good feeling. That is not something that I seek for. And, ostensibly this is supposed to be more of a puzzle game, but it relies way, way too much on the platforming mechanics, and they don't give you good platforming mechanics, so...
Well, one game that's more of a puzzle game is the brand new Mario vs. DK Tipping Stars.
Yes, indeed.
And I am still really intrigued by this game. I mean, a big reason I played Mario vs. Donkey Kong was to find out whether I'd like the series.
And it seems like that was like a bad idea, because the games are so different. They basically took that Lemmings concept with the mini Marios and made it the whole game, which is like, that's a small part of this game, and yet it's like the basis of that one. It's very different because you're using the touchscreen to move them around, and you don't have an independent character on screen. It's just, you as the guy with the stylus are the main character.
Yeah. But what's fascinating about this game is, first of all, can I ask, do you know why it's called Tipping Stars? Do you know what it's referring to?
Yeah, I do. It's all to do with the creation aspect, right? How there's a level editor, and you basically collect stars by going through levels, and if you're not the sort of person who likes to create stuff in games, like both of us don't really like doing that. We're not Little Big Planet people making these crazy things. We're not going to be the people in Mario Maker making those. And so what we can do is we can take our stars and tip them to creators who are making cool stuff that we enjoy, and they will get the benefits of unlocking new things, I guess. I'm not sure like what it specifically involves, but like getting new parts to use in levels and that kind of stuff, so...
But you know what my little theory is about all these online features and this tipping
I think
idea?
It's probably going to be a prototype for if they'll use it in Mario Maker, is what I'm thinking.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And from everything I heard Don Koopman from Nintendo World Report talking about this game, and he was very positive on all the online features and the way that it integrates the Wii U and 3DS, just 3DS.
Yeah, whatever.
God, I'm confused. Yeah, the way it incorporates the two versions, and he just said the online features were superb, and I'm intrigued to just watch this one, and I mean, I might get it and obviously give you a download code, NBZ.
Yeah, that would be cool, because it's cross-buy, first time.
Exactly, and I think it'd be something cool to talk about on the show and try out the online. So yeah, interested in watching that one for the future, especially with regards to Mario Maker.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that one mechanically will be way more sound than DK here with the...
But NBZ, that was an awful lot about what I've been playing.
It was, Val. You've been playing too many games. I mean, I chipped in there because I also played Mario vs. Donkey Kong, but I've also been playing some other games. I'm going to kick things off with a game that I'm never going to complete because a rare phenomenon occurred involving me and motion sickness, which...
could become more common in the future if our third segment's anything.
You know, Bally, it's a deadly premonition. I'm not sure. Bally, you've known me for a very long time. You know that I am susceptible, shall we say, to motion sickness. It happens badly when I'm in cars and I'm going backwards. Like, if I'm in a taxi and I'm facing the opposite direction to where the taxi's going, I will start to probably feel queasy.
This is a common thing with British taxis, we should mention.
Yes, it's not an American cabs thing, obviously, but in British taxis there are seats that face away from the driver, which is, I don't know, it's a weird thing. But anyway, the point is I get motion sick. And there are a few games where it affects me badly, and it's mainly first-person games. Now, it happened in Portal and Portal 2, but it was better in those games. I had to take breaks between like hour and a half sessions, but I was able to always go back to Portal and be able to continue to play through it. I think the reason for that is, though it's not a shooter, you do have that gun in front of you, the gun model, so you always have like kind of this tracking position that you know there's something in front of you and it's tangible, and I don't know, it has a feedback that allows me to not feel super sick. I'm fine in general first-person shooters. Like, I played hours and hours of Titanfall without ever feeling any of this, so it is a unique situation that can occur for me, and it happened in Unfinished Swan on the PlayStation 3, which was an indie title that I was really interested in and thought was super cool, but it just made me want to throw up the whole time. My head started spinning, and I would have to like lie on my bed for literally half an hour to get it to go away, to make myself feel better. And the same kind of thing happened here with this game. It's called A Story About My Uncle. It's on Steam, and it was recommended by Jeff Ganata of Weekend Confirmed fame, DLC right now, and he last year kind of claimed it as one of his favorite games that came out. And so it went on sale on Steam a couple of weeks ago for about £2.50. I was like, you know what? Jeff said this game's great. I kind of trust his opinion on a lot of stuff. Let's try it out. And I was enjoying it for the most part, but then it started to kick in of me feeling sick. And let me kind of explain the premise behind this game. It's basically a first-person Spider-Man. You're platforming, and you have this glove which can shoot like electric beams that hang onto platforms.
It's quite a good recipe for sickness.
It really is. And I think another fundamental problem is there's a run button. The run button is like going at Mach 5 speed. Like, Jesus Christ, everything rushes past you so quickly that my brain my brain's dying right now. My brain barely has time to process all of it, and I don't know, the mechanics of the game I wouldn't say are super solid either. Like, I'm not super disappointed that I won't be able to finish this because it wasn't really living up to the expectations I had. The voice acting was fucking terrible. It doesn't look very nice. It's not a super pretty game, and like, you meet these aliens along the way and they look horrible, like really. Not in the sense of like they're designed specifically to look horrible because they're aliens. It's just like the modeling work they've done on these characters is just awful. They look ugly, really, really bad. And so, you know, there's a lot of negatives around it. It's a great idea and concept, this Spider-Man first-person thing, but I just don't think there's a level of accuracy that you need and a level of kind of physics that are required to make something like that work that I don't think they executed well on. Like, you don't have a good amount of maneuverability while you're in the air. So like, I'd hang on to something, swing past it, and then I'd overshoot because I couldn't hold back and, you know, give myself that area to move around with. And I think that's what you really need in a game like this. And so, you know, maybe that contributed to it, but in the end, I felt too sick to go on. I played for about an hour. I played for an hour straight, and I was like, man,
time to lie down.
I did. I turned off Steam. I put my face down in my pillow and just lay on my bed, and it took about 20 minutes, but I got better.
And chundered everywhere.
Yeah, no, I wasn't actually sick. It's not really like a vomity sick. It's more of like a head spinny thing. It's hard to describe, but it affects me quite badly. And we've talked about my issues with Yoshi's Island before, and how that with its scrolling screens sometimes gets me into a bit of a tizzle.
Well, I sure hope you can keep up with the future.
I hope that VR works for me and I don't get sick. And, you know, Gabe Newell's claiming, you know, 100% of people, it's going to be fine. But
I mean, look at the bright side. Maybe, you know, Oculus will want to hire you as a tester because they know that you have this sickness, and they're like, if we can get it to work on him, we're sorted, sort of thing. You know, you can be one of those guys.
I could go ahead and ask Palmer Lucky if he wants to have a Smash game, and would be down. That would be fun. Yes, indeed. So yeah, it's a story about my uncle is the name of the game. In case you are interested, it's cool. I would just steer clear of it if you're like me. I don't know if you're like me. I don't know if anyone's like me. Quite frankly,
I'd be well up for giving it a go if I had Steam.
Sure, I think it's something you'd probably enjoy, Bally. So yeah, it's a little janky, but yeah, it's worth checking out. The other thing that I wanted to talk about real quick is I finally ended my journey with Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Said
Woo!
that yes, indeed, happy times. Said that I would take some time to finish this off, and I did this weekend. Basically, a couple of sessions playing it.
What was your total play time?
It wasn't too long. It was only 15 hours. But when it comes to this kind of open world game, like, I don't feel that drawn to going back into it, so I kind of left it to ruminate for a couple of weeks. I hadn't actually played it for a while, but as it turned out, I was kind of near the end anyway. It's kind of strange because there's only 20 main story missions. A lot of the game is side quests that you can just go ahead and do if you like, but if you don't, I don't think any of them are super interesting. Like, they really just act as a conduit for you to get more experience, to level up your skills and unlock new skills and that kind of thing. And honestly, you can finish the game without going and getting those. It's not your Assassin's Creed thing where you have to have the ship upgrades in order to finish the main story. Like, you can finish the main story without having these things. They're just kind of bonuses that will make you more powerful. But the end of the game is kind of interesting because I started off being super frustrated by it, because the idea is late in the story you get the ability to brand orcs. Now, before I was talking about how I was going around killing war chiefs. Well, when you get to the second area, if you kill a war chief, instantly he'll be replaced by another one. So the way that you have to clear out the second area is not to kill them, but instead to bring them under your control. So you basically go up to them and like stick your hand on them, and this bright light explodes from their eyes, and they become, part of your own orc army. They are branded, so to speak. And so that's the main objective of one of the final missions, is you have to brand every war chief, and there are 5 of them. And these guys are fucking difficult. Like, they are so hard, not only because, each of them will have a bunch of things they're resistant to, but also they are surrounded by their captains and their elite captains and all the other orcs in the fort around them. So you're literally fighting just this giant army if you want to go after one of these guys. So there are a couple of ways you can approach it. Either you can go ahead and brand some of their own captains, so you can go around the world, find them, and bring them under your control, and then enter a situation where you make them betray their master. So you're like, alright, let's go here, and then I'll have the advantage because I'll have some orcs on my side, and it'll be an easier mass to clear through, because there are so many enemies that can appear on screen at one time, and managing all those and being able to fight with them and get out of the situation becomes a really challenging thing to go up against. So that's the best way.
And there's no frame rate drops when that happens, when there's sort of a large number of enemies.
I imagine probably on the PlayStation and Xbox there would be, but I'm a PC master race, let me tell you, motherfucker.
I see.
No.
How could I have forgotten?
No. Yeah. My PC was able to handle it well, so I didn't experience any kind of nasty frame drops or anything. So it's not like it was a really good kind of 60 FPS smooth experience the whole way through. It's a nicely optimized game for PC. So if you are looking at getting it for this platform, I would say that go ahead, might as well bite on it. But as I was saying, yeah, you basically the easiest way to do it is to get those guys branded and go up against. But even then, like, sometimes they're way too weak to even help you out, and sometimes they'll die really quickly, and then you'll just have to run away or just end up being murdered. And I died way more in the end portions of this game than I ever did throughout the main story part. Because it's such a tough situation. And so what I decided, I was getting really fucking annoyed and frustrated, and I was like, why did they make this the end game where you have to go around and brand them? But I feel like I've kind of come around on it, because it is challenging for a reason, because they put you in these situations where you need to use your brain and you need to kind of think about what is the best way to go about it. So I took a look at some of the vulnerabilities. I was like, okay, this war chief has a fear of caragors. The caragors are the big kind of beast that ride around. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to like distract him, put him in a situation where he's right next to a cage. Then I'll shoot open the cage, get the caragor to run at him. And what that does is it makes him so afraid that instead of having to wear his health down to the point where I can brand him, I can just run after him, and he'll generally go in a different direction than any of the other orcs are, get him on his own, and as soon as he's on his own, you can just brand him straight away. You don't need to wear down his health. He's just in the range to be dominated, and you do it, and he's done. And it's like, okay, wow, that is the way you need to approach this. The problem is that some of these orcs don't have any fears or anything that, you know, will make them run away. So in those situations, you absolutely have to brand one of their subordinates and get them to have a power struggle and you know, fight for you, basically. But in the other situations, if you can, you know, get around that, I recommend doing that, because it is a way easier time, and you know, it challenges you, but I think it's fair in some degrees that it makes you think instead of being brute force. Like you can't go in there and just charge down and finish these orcs, because you are going to get murdered straight up. Like, you have to have a battle plan, and yeah, it's interesting.
So Giant Bomb, which we both have a lot of time for, that we think they're a great website.
Absolutely.
They had this as their top game of the year for 2014.
Yes.
Can you see where they're coming from, or are you a bit kind of, it's a good game, but it's not quite hitting those, you know, upper echelons of great games for you? Where's this rank?
I like Shadow of Mordor. I think Shadow of Mordor is a solid game. The thing that I come down on is everyone seems to be tooting their horn about the Nemesis system. Oh, the Nemesis system, this is this great new innovative fantastic thing. I don't think it's like the groundbreaking, you know, open world mechanic, the second coming of the open world mechanic that everyone is making it out to be. So in that sense, I kind of disagree with a lot of critics. But I don't know, the thing with Giant Bomb is there are so many of them, right, deciding on what is going to be game of the year, and to be honest, it was the easy choice. It was the kind of the consensus choice. Everyone enjoyed it. It's a solid game. It was high up on a lot of their lists, and it's kind of like, you know, not everyone's going to play Bayonetta, and that's fine, because it's a niche title. It's only on one system. Perfectly understandable. Shadow of Mordor is available on everything. It is a traditional open world formula. People are very, you know, open, I guess, to trying those experiences, and so everyone did, and because the majority of people played it, the majority of people enjoyed it, it kind of felt just like the consensus choice that didn't want to cause any arguments. So I wouldn't necessarily say that Giant Bomb was praising Shadow of Mordor to high heaven, but they certainly liked it, and you know, it was a good pick, I think. And yeah, you know, when it comes down to Game of the Year, it does come down to those kind of things. Like, what's kind of the more mainstream thing that did things right when in a year when everything else fucked up royally? Shadow of Mordor did. It
ticks all the boxes by the most people.
Yeah, it really does. And I enjoyed it. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad game, because I clearly had a lot of fun with it, despite being at the end, like, kind of frustrated. I worked through it, and at the end, when I had branded all 5 war chiefs, I felt like a god. I felt like a master, and was really satisfied. And I know a lot of people talked about how the ending was disappointing, because it is basically a QTE on the final boss. But to be frank with you, I really liked that, because I didn't want to get to the end of a game and have a final boss that was way too difficult for me to beat and be frustrated and annoyed that I couldn't finish the game. That happened with Dust and Elysian Tale, which I still haven't beaten the final boss for, and which, fuck you for that final boss, because that thing is a piece of shit. I was glad for once to be like, you know what, the hard work is done. The final boss for me was branding the war chiefs. I did it, and you know, give me a nice cutscene at the end, and that's all I ask for, and that's what it did. So, Shadow of Mordor, finished, my first open world game for 2015. I hope there are a couple more going to be coming out that I will enjoy, including Zelda. The new Legend of Zelda, of course. Yes, indeed. So, yeah, we look forward to that. But that is pretty much going to cover the stuff we've been playing for the past couple of weeks. But do not go anywhere. We shall return very soon with emails that you've sent to us. Don't go anywhere. Okay, everyone, welcome back to the second part of our show. As is the tradition, we are going to be answering some of your emails that you've kindly sent to us, and yeah, we got some good ones recently, so keep doing that, keep sending them in, and you can send those to our email address, which Bally is going to read for you.
NYPPQuestions@gmail.com.
Absolutely. So how about we kick things off, and Bally, you have the first question for this week.
Our first question is from Alex. NBZ, Bally, great job on the podcast. I finally caught up on all the episodes and I'm loving it. My question is, I'm planning to celebrate my liberation from university by gaming hard this summer. I'm already set on buying a PS4 because I've enjoyed the PS3 so much, but would also love to get back into the world of Nintendo by purchasing either the new 3DS or a Wii U, especially after hearing you guys rave about all the games I'm missing out on. At the moment, there is only around a £25 to £50 price difference between the new 3DS and the now relatively dated Wii U. With this in mind, which console would you recommend overall and why? Keep up the good work, Alex. P.S. Bally, we should totally get some NHL on the go at Easter. Yes, Alex, we should. I should also mention Alex is a good friend of mine. We lived together for a couple of years at university, and yes, he's a bit of a gamer as well.
Yeah, and we would love to have Alex on the show at some point.
Yes, so, come on, talk with us.
Exactly. But yeah, it's a good question, one for I think a lot of people out there who are thinking, you know, there are some great Nintendo games coming out, but there are two platforms. I don't have that much money to spend. Which one should I put my dollars upon? So, what do you think, Bally? Knowing Alex personally, knowing the kind of things he likes, where should he go down this route?
Alex's gaming tastes are very different to mine in many ways, I'd say. So, for example, I'd probably say his number one Nintendo franchise that he's into is Advance Wars. And the downside of that is obviously that there isn't an Advance Wars game. Hasn't been one since, I think, the last one on DS, which was ages ago in like 2008. Yes. Yeah. He's also quite into realistic sports sim games. He's a big... God, what's that game called? Oh my god. Borderlands fan. He's also a big fan of... goodness sake, what's that open world fantasy game that everyone absolutely loves?
Skyrim?
Exactly, he's also a very big Skyrim.
He's relying on me to tell you what he likes.
I can't remember Skyrim. So, in terms of Nintendo stuff, he's not really tried out a huge amount, so I'm really unsure as to what his tastes are. I must mention he did get quite into Mario Kart at one point when we were at uni together, and he did start a file of Wind Waker and enjoyed it immensely as far as I can remember, but then the save file basically got lost or corrupted, or there was some issue basically. So maybe that's an interesting angle. This is a tough one. I mean, overall for him, I think at this point in time, the 3DS has an amazing backlog of games, like a really great solid lineup, and I think that a handheld would complement his PS4 purchase quite nicely. But having said that, there is the allure of Zelda Wii U, which is pretty hard to avoid, and I was speaking to him about this question before the show, and he is quite keen on Zelda Wii U, so it's difficult to sum up. I mean, what would you say?
Well, you're talking about how he loves Advance Wars, and you're a big fan as well of that series.
Yeah.
And you were really taken by Codename Steam, as was I. And I think that's an interesting one, because it is kind of this more complicated but still strategy-focused game that he may well be interested in. And not to mention, there are also a Fire Emblem game on the system. I'm not sure what Alex's experience with Fire Emblem is, but they're very kind of similar franchises between Advance Wars and
they are similar.
And of course, there's a new one coming out. So if you're looking for strategy stuff, then damn well get a 3DS, a new 3DS, because there's plenty. There's plenty to take from that. The Wii U is kind of slim pickings there. But I would agree with you in saying that, yes, the 3DS has just this wonderful backlog and just a hugely solid library. I mean, you think about things like Luigi's Mansion, there's Kid Icarus, there's
Link
a bunch
Between
of
Worlds.
yeah, the great Zelda games, the remakes of Ocarina and Majora, like just almost every franchise from Nintendo is represented, barring Metroid, as unfortunately is the case. But I don't think you can really go wrong there. And there's Pokemon too. Was Alex ever a big into Pokemon at all?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And
Well,
I don't
X
know
and
if
Y
he'd
are
be...
some of the best games
Yeah.
in the Pokemon series in a long time. So those are available.
That is a good
too.
point. I've got two basic overall points that I think are quite important.
Okay.
I'd say number one, and I think he's going to do this anyway just because of the way that the dates work out, is wait till after E3, because there's always a chance that Metroid will be announced, and we don't know yet whether that was going to be for 3DS or for Wii U or even both. Like, I might even think might happen.
Do you think that would be a draw though for him? Do you think Metroid would be a draw?
Yeah, he was. I should have mentioned. Do think he was quite big into 2D Metroid and like Fusion. I think he might have been. He either owned Zero Mission or Fusion. I can't quite remember now.
Well, can't go wrong with either of those.
Exactly. So, I mean, if there was a 2D Metroid on 3DS, I think that might seal the deal potentially. But I was also just going to say that. Yeah, Codename Steam from the demo I played, it's far more like Advance Wars to Fire Emblem in my mind at least. So I do think that is a game that might appeal to you, and that's coming out just next month, I want to say. Like
it's coming out in May.
May.
It's actually like 2 weeks time, I think, for North America, but we're getting it in May instead.
Yeah. So, and then just the final point I'd make is, you're humming and hawing between the Wii U and the new 3DS. But I've just bought a new 3DS, so I actually have an old 3DS waiting for you, Alex. Like for a few, I'll sell it to you for a few quid, and like you could pick up that 3DS and the Wii U together, and then cover all the bases. Although maybe you don't want to own so many systems. And I must admit, the new 3DS is quite awesome, but it's up to you. So I don't know.
I mean, yeah, the option's always available because Bally probably not gonna charge you that highly for his old shit 3DS.
Yeah.
But
But I completely understand if you want the new shiny model, because it is very new and very shiny.
And there's great stuff added to it with the camera stuff.
Yeah.
So
It's a tough one. I think we're kind of siding on 3DS here, aren't we?
Probably, although Bally, my background has just changed, and it's the Zelda Wii U thing from E3. And
yeah.
it's tugging away right there.
That's the thing, is that post E3, we don't know what's coming for Zelda Wii U, and there might be something in there that will blow everyone away. And
you're also talking to me about how Alex really loves Skyrim to the point at which like hundreds of hours or something like that.
I'm pretty confident he's invested over 100 hours. I'd
Yeah.
even go close to 200. He'll probably tell me it's even more than that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't be surprised that a lot of people fell down that hole.
Yeah.
Looking at Zelda Wii U, there is clear influence.
I think this
Skyrim
might be
influence.
selling it to him. I think the Zelda Skyrim link is making.
Now, obviously, I don't know how Nintendo will do on delivering on that similar kind of experience, because, of course, they're very different games, in terms of Skyrim being much more kind of Western-focused RPG. Zelda is going to stick to its conventions no matter how many things it kind of drops. You'll still have the dungeons, you'll still have that kind of sword-play gameplay, and it's not in first-person, of course, although, Skyrim, you could switch between the two, but most people, I think, played in first-person. But just the promise there of this open-ended exploration is something that has never been done in a Zelda game before. It's often been, teased in things like Wind Waker, which wasn't fully... it was open, but there wasn't, like, a breadth and depth of things to do. And I think if Nintendo nail it with this one, then you're probably looking at, like, a hot system seller, to the point at which, like, maybe eschew all the other games we mentioned and focus solely on this. But that's the risk, right? If it doesn't turn out that way, then you may be disappointed.
It's hard to say. I'd even look at the new Zeldas like an expanded and improved on Wind Waker potentially, and from Alex's brief experience, but positive experience with Wind Waker, maybe that might be a selling point. I don't know.
And the other thing that you were mentioning before is that the Wind Waker HD is on Wii U. So
yes.
were he to pick up the Wii U, he would be able to prime himself for the new Zelda by playing Wind Waker. And as someone who did that recently, it's a great idea.
It's a really, as someone who's completed both versions, the HD Wii U version is so much more refined. It's so much nicer looking game in general, and yeah, maybe we're siding with Wii U now. God, this is a tough one.
Look, Alex, here's the deal. You buy both systems, man. Look, you got
honestly, at some point. I mean, like I said, you can get my 3DS on the cheap. It still works. It's working fine, but I don't know. E3 is going to shake things up. And we should also mention Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U is an amazing game. So if you
although Mario Kart 7's better and it's on 3DS, so I don't need
Mario Kart 8 is better. I think society.
We're never going to agree. We're never going to agree on the point of Mario Kart. So let's just leave it at that.
Yeah,
I
don't know. We're not really siding with either one here. So
no, we're going to be typical Nintendo fanboys and say just buy everything. So fuck it.
Buy everything.
All right.
Great. But yeah, thanks for writing in.
At least we gave him some thinking points, so there you go.
And I will happily play a bit of NHL with you at Easter.
Absolutely.
So our next email is from Bruno Garcia. Hello MBZ and Bally. Since I got my first job, I've been buying a lot of games. In 1 year, I've purchased over 80 games. That's without counting digital games. The sales that have been recently going on Vita aren't helping. My question is, how do you decide whether or not to buy a game? Personally, if a game is $14 or less, it's almost an instant buy. If it's $15 to $20, I think about it for a while and look at reviews. Thanks for the great podcast, guys. Well, thank you, Bruno, for writing in.
Yes, indeed. Frequent contributor to the podcast.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Where do you fall down on the buying games thing, Bally? Because I feel like you buy games less frequently than me, simply because you prefer to, chip away at the backlog. As
I'm quite strict, aren't I? Now, and since starting this podcast, I've become quite. I like the ethos of, and I was talking about this with Mario Bros. Deluxe, but I like the ethos of don't buy a new game until you complete an old one. And that sounds like such a thing your parents will tell you. Like,
yeah.
Don't go buying these new games, you've not even finished that old one you had.
Well, they wouldn't even know that, but sure.
Yeah, exactly. But I just think, like, I've got so many hours worth of game content that I've not experienced, that I want to experience, that I need to experience, and there's no point in buying new games, especially AAA big games, unless I really, really want them day one. And I think sorry, I was just going to say, those are my two price brackets. Is either it's a massive AAA game that I'm ready and keen to buy day one, or I do like to target those sales. And I think Nintendo have been amazing with the eShop sales recently, whether it's Wii U or 3DS. And I really like looking out for the deals and trying to pick off what works, because I can pick up great games like, what did I get recently? Like Bit Trip Runner 2. I think I got that for like £4.50, £5 or something. Really great deal. Loved that game. So just small deals like that I do look out for.
So it's not necessarily like a price point in specific. It's more that you are always on the lookout for when something is on sale, and then having a value judgment, whether it's a disc game or a download game, and what is that worth to you, and whether it is worth jumping in at this point, and how much you want to play. Like, it's a multiple factors.
Yeah, and it's
on,
everything
right?
from how many games I've got left to play versus the playtime of games even. For example, I'm spending I've already invested like 15 hours into Fire Emblem 7. And I only got that for like £4.50. So like that's already an amazing deal. Whereas I spent an awful lot of money on Captain Toad and played that for like 12, 13 hours, which is less of a good deal. But I mean, I purposely wanted to play that day one and made that conscious decision. And it's about balancing that up. And I mean, I've completed lots of shorter games between the start of the year and now. So it's just about chipping away at that backlog and then topping it up with quality games, in my view.
Yeah. For me,
You have a problem, NBC.
I no, I wouldn't say I have a problem. I'd say that I had a problem.
Oh, you better
And
now.
And yeah, I'm better. I've cured myself clearly. No, see the thing is when you get into PC gaming for the first time, it's really exciting, and it's really exciting because there is the phenomenon known as the Steam sale. And the first time that the Steam sale happened for me was in the summer of, I think, 2013. I got my PC in around maybe April or May of that year. And when summer hit, the Steam sale was going on, and I was in London a lot of the time. I was actually hanging out with you and our good friend Ali T. And I actually remember when I bought one of the Steam games, we were out in Harrow meeting up with, I think it was one of Ali T's friends who was also there. And I looked at my phone, I realised, oh, Lego Lord of the Rings is on sale for £5. Well, might as well buy that because it's a good deal. And I just bought it and then and there. And I, during that era, that summer sale, I spent maybe £50 total and got like 25 to 30 games from that exchange, which I thought was just astounding. The fact that, these sales give you such insane discounts and on games obviously that I'd never played before because I was very much exclusively Nintendo and PlayStation up to that point, and there were so many fantastic things that I never had a chance to play, like Super Meat Boy and great things like that, but at such a low price that I couldn't help myself from getting them. And at this point I'm way more kind of frugal with it. I know that there are things that I want, but I'm going to hold off on them until it makes more sense, because there are a lot of games that I own now on Steam that have been on sale many more times since I bought them, and for even cheaper. So you do get to this point where you're like, if I'm not going to play it straight away, I'm not going to buy it right now, because I know that otherwise it will go on sale at a later point, and I will kick myself for having spent even more on it, despite how cheap it is now. So yes, I will say that I did do that, but I haven't really gone down that route anymore. But it's interesting because it's kind of changed my perspective on how much value I perceive in a game. Like, let's take, for example, South Park: The Stick of Truth. I think that's going to be a really fun game that I will enjoy. But I probably won't buy it until it's like £3.50 or something on Steam. And I'm willing to wait. And that's something I feel is kind of dangerous with the way that Steam sales have conditioned people. Because when you are, looking to get a bargain and to get a good offer on something, if you have patience, then you'll find it eventually. And that is the exact phenomenon that's happening right now with so many people, is maybe games aren't selling as well at launch or just during its normal period on sale than they would obviously in the Steam sales. So I don't know, man. It's
just thinking of that value proposition and the unexpected nature of the games industry. Someone could have spent hundreds of pounds. It's like, how much was Metroid Prime Trilogy on eBay? It was going for 100 and something quid because there were just so few of them out, and then all of a sudden there's a Nintendo Direct. Nintendo announced that there's the Wii Virtual Console on the Wii U, and they announced Metroid Prime Trilogy for £9, and you're just like, oh wow. And it's just kind of it's so unexpected what's going to happen, not necessarily even what's going to go on sale. And yeah, we do live in quite a luxurious time. I do feel like you're getting more bang for your buck than you did, even though I do think those AAA titles are going up in price.
Oh, as a consumer, there's no doubt. Price-wise, this is the best time to be a gamer. There's no question in my mind. From the place that we are with indie games and with digital distribution and the potential for sales on those platforms, it's never been a better time. And
Nintendo actually getting in line with that idea of sales and promotions. They had a Zelda sale, for goodness sake. Who would have predicted Nintendo doing a digital Zelda sale 4 years ago? That's just unspeakable. They did a Donkey Kong sale when I picked up Tropical Freeze and Donkey Kong Country on the SNES. These are great sale ideas that work, and I picked up Link's Awakening with the Zelda sale. I pick up so many games on these sales, and their marketing works, and it's a great way of picking up bang for your buck.
And the thing with Nintendo is their games never go down in price otherwise. So it's a great way to get consumers in because you know their prices never go down. So when they do, in that real rare occasion, damn straight you're going to jump on board and get something because it's not going to happen again for a really long time probably. So it's smart. It's smart on their end to do that because they have just they have this track record of they hold their value. Their games hold their value, and when they subvert that, people go crazy. So. Real smart. When it comes down to the AAA Nintendo stuff, in terms of my buying habits, if it's something that I'm looking forward to that I want, I'm going to be day one. With Smash Brothers, I was day one on Smash Brothers. It didn't matter how much it was, I was there, and I think that's going to be the thing that I always keep consistent. Is if it's a Nintendo game that I want day one that I'm excited for, I'm going to put down the money for it. But if it's anything else, even Sony exclusives, I don't know. When it comes to Uncharted 4, though, that may be something that I'll have to, think about. Although I hate the prospect of paying like 50 quid for a game. And I know in the UK, that's how much PS4 and Xbox One games go for. So at launch, I probably won't have a good time finding it. Although those obviously drop in price much faster. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But for the time being, it's really just Nintendo that I reserve the right to do that for, quite honestly.
So our final question this time is from James. Hi NBZ and Bally. The same as last time, I've got two questions for you both. One about gaming and one that is totally off topic. So the first question we've got to answer is, if you won £5 million, I like how you've adjusted it for us in the UK. Yeah. If you won £5 million in the lottery right now, what would be the first thing you would buy and why? NBZ, go.
Oh god. I'm fucking boring. I'd probably just put it in the bank and slowly buy things over time. I wouldn't want to be the kind of person who goes out and just splashes out and buys a house or something ridiculous straight up. I would be a bit more frugal with it. I would probably buy something that I really wanted, but not super expensive crazy, and then be smart about it. Think about how I'd want to put the money out and use it and be that way. So I'm boring. I'm not gonna really go out and get anything crazy. So there you go. What about you, Barry?
I'd put it in a bank first of all, like you said, that'd be a smart idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd want to use. I'm really into my politics. For those who don't know, I love a bit of politics. I'd want to use it in some sort of political way. I don't know how. Now, one idea I'd want to. This is really off topic, isn't it?
Yeah, like you said it was. So.
One idea I'd love to start up some sort of news outlet using the money. I always think it's really difficult how the media funds itself, whether it's from a trust or whether it's from private investors or from big corporations. It's always difficult to have independent, fair, balanced media.
Yes, yeah.
So I'd love to start up my own news outlet. I don't know whether that be online, paper, a bit of both, or
basically
podcast.
Be an entrepreneur about it, essentially.
I'd like to be a media entrepreneur with a bit of cash. Yeah, let's go for that and promote some of my political ideas, which I'm sure I could say for another time.
Yes. So let's keep that away from the realm of Nintendo, shall we?
Let's keep that away. Yeah, absolutely. So,
indeed,
I think we just about covered that one. The second question. The one type of gaming I've never heard discussed on your show is iOS or phone gaming. I seldom play mobile games myself, but I'm curious to see if either of you ever dabble in this variety of game, and if you do, which ones do you spend time with? Do you think Nintendo will ever release any sort of phone game, and do you think it would be successful? Keep it up, guys.
Well, clearly... Sorry,
I was just going to say, keep it up, guys. James in Vancouver, Canada. That is a very long way away. Sorry, go for it, MEZ.
I was gonna say, is James a investor in Nintendo? Because that's what they ask every time at the investor briefing. Yeah. Hey Nintendo, put on phones. No, obviously I kid. Should we tackle the Nintendo thing first before we talk about iOS gamings? Obviously Nintendo, we talked about this a lot in the past, but I don't think that they are going to release anything willingly on iOS or Android. The best they would do is to put out an app that linked in with their own platforms, but I have trouble seeing them doing anything that is actually game related on there. So
I think there's a danger that there might be 3DS owners, for example, who might think, why would I buy a 3DS when I can have a handheld Nintendo experience on a mobile phone or iOS device?
Yes.
And I think Nintendo would be slightly scared of eating their own tail. I also think that the 3DS is successful enough to suggest that there is definitely a market for a more these terms are terrible, but like a more gamery game system. So
Sure.
I was gonna say hardcore game system, but and maybe that's a more appropriate word, but everyone knows what I mean. Like the 3DS is considerably more designed for gamers than a phone is, full stop.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think there's still a market for a handheld device like that. So I don't think we're there yet. I think if one day the 3DS or its successor didn't sell at all and the mobile market was just taking over, that Nintendo might be more inclined to move over, but not quite yet.
Yeah, and there are a lot of risks associated with that stuff. The race to the bottom, the free-to-play things.
Candy Crush and go jump off a cliff, honestly.
The shit that happens, like when Monument Valley, which is apparently, like, everyone calls Monument Valley this really awesome iOS game, actually got featured in the newest season of House of Cards. Frank Underwood
heard about
ends
this.
up playing. Yeah. But Monument Valley put out an expansion for it, which was, I think the guy charged like £2 for the expansion, and like the original game's like an hour or something. It's not that long, and the expansion, seemingly kind of a similar length. And people went on to the reviews and just one-starred the shit out of it because they're like, this is outrageous, how can you charge $1.99 for this piece of... And I'm like, what the fuck is the mindset of the person in the iOS store? Like, it's the same thing I was talking about with the Steam games, how we're being conditioned there to wait for sales, to wait for things to go on sale. In iOS, if it's not free, people are not really willing to pay for it straight up front, and that is fucking scary. I saw on Twitter quite recently there is a campaign by Apple which is pay once, keep it forever, right? Which,
Lol.
like, what the fuck? Why? This is a traditional model of any media, is buy a thing, have it, and yet on the iOS store they are having to put this campaign together to teach people that, hey, there are games out there you can just pay money for, and guess what? There's no microtransactions, you have it forever, you don't have to pay anything else. It blew my fucking mind, but that is the world we're living in, and that's a danger for Nintendo, honestly, because I don't know, they like to charge premium for their games, and because they're worth it, because those games have a lot of quality and time and effort put into them. And if, the market responds to them in the way that they have to, a lot of these other games, I don't know, they'll have a good time there. So, it's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing, Bally.
And yes. Do you play any iOS games, NBZ?
Well, I don't have an iPhone anymore. I have an Android phone, but I've dabbled between things there and then. I've played your Temple Runs, I've played your Jetpack Joyrides, your Flappy Birds, yeah, if there's a popular mobile game, I'll give it a look and check it out just to see what people are talking about. But I generally don't go in for that experience. It's as I say, I don't actually consider them games. I consider them time wasters more than anything else. Like, it's a thing where you're waiting for the bus. There's no reason to pull your 3DS out because that's a little bit too much effort. Just pop your phone and have a couple of rounds of this really short score-based game. And that's the thing. Most games on iOS are score-based, simple, very easy to understand experiences. So I have dabbled in those. But recently there was actually a really cool game on phones that I played with a group of people, and it's a game called Space Team. Which was promoted pretty heavily, I guess in 2012, was it? It was, I think that's when it was released, but Giant Bomb talked a lot about this game because it's really fascinating, and it's almost a board game in a sense, but not quite. It's more of this kind of social experience. So the idea is, you have multiple people. In this situation we had 5 people, and on your screen you have this kind of setup as if you're in a spaceship, and you have all these gears and levers and knobs that you have to twist, and each of them has a name on them. And what happens is everyone gets a command. So the command might be turn the gear to lever 3 or whatever. And so if you have a thing which is like a gear, you have to turn it to number 3. But you may not have that thing on your screen. It may be on someone else's. So you have to give your command and hope that the other person realizes that they have that and that they put that in and command it in. The problem is when you have multiple people, everyone is getting a command at the same time, so everyone is shouting at the same time over one another, and it just becomes this chaotic clusterfuck where, you're trying to listen out to hear instructions from other people while also paying attention to what's being displayed on your screen. And then there are situations where the console starts falling apart, so you have to use the touchscreen to put it back and fix it in place. Like some ooze will drip out, you have to wipe the screen to see the name of the thing that you're interacting with. It gets crazy, and then it's like, oh, an asteroid's coming, everyone shake your phone, so everyone has to shake their phone at the same time. Yeah, it becomes like this weird experience, and it's a really kind of interesting social thing, which I found really fun. And there's this gratification when you get past a level, because we were getting quite stuck. We got to like part 6, and then we all ended up dying then, but we eventually got it to work where we beat that level and got through, and just like the elation in the room of everyone like finishing it and being like, fuck yes, we did it, we got past that thing. It's like using teamwork to get there. It was awesome. So Space Team is a great little iOS thing. It's free and it's really cool. So if you have lots of people around, it's a nice thing to play. I recommend it. So I guess that's how far my iOS knowledge goes. But yeah,
it's a lot further than mine.
Look, there are cool games on iOS and on Android and phones in general. I wouldn't like throw it under the bus, but majority of the time I'm just I have a negative outlook on that stuff, and I think rightly so for most of that. So
I think for me personally, I have an even more negative outlook on that kind of thing. I just want to stay so far away from it that I kind of know that I would half enjoy a lot of the games on iOS, and could quite easily get quite addicted to some of them, maybe even some of the tripe such as Candy Crush, and I just want to completely avoid it, because I'm really happy with the games I do play on 3DS or whatever, and I will sit there on the tube in London playing my new 3DS, and there'll be 2 people either side of me Candy Crushing away, and I just think to myself, you fools, you fools, just look at me, I am the enlightened, just like you're still in the darkness, but that's okay, because you're enjoying that darkness, and yeah, and
may it swallow you.
May it swallow you up.
Alright, well Bally, I think that that's probably going to do us for emails this week, but as always you can send your questions in, so Bally, why don't you let the people know the email address once more?
NYPPQuestions@gmail.com. Keep them coming. We always need more.
Alright. Well, that is going to be us for this segment. We are shooting off for the 3rd one, so prepare yourselves and make sure you have a seatbelt strapped on.
And the sick bag ready.
Sick bag ready, because we're going into the murky world of virtual reality. So stay right with us. We'll be back in a bit. Okay everyone, welcome back to the final segment of our show, and this week we're going to be talking about virtual reality, and
the future is here.
It is now, and this was a little bit prompted by an email that was sent to us, so Bally, why don't you read that one out?
This email's from Oliver. Hey MBZ and Bally, it's Ollie from Sydney, Australia. Just one question. Do you think / how soon do you think Nintendo will join the VR market? And could they do it better than others if they did? Thanks for reading and answering.
Well, I think this is appropriate on a few levels, because Nintendo have history with VR. VR is a big thing right now, and we are pretty much just coming off the back of GDC, the Game Developers Conference, where VR was a hot topic of discussion among many companies, and there are many players in the race. So I guess let's talk about it, Bally. What do you think of VR straight out the box? Let's.
It's really exciting. It's really, really exciting. It's really cool that gaming is the industry that's leading it forward. It's not film necessarily. It's not television. It's not anything. It's video gaming, and that's really cool because arguably VR could take over in numerous areas of technology, whether it be like films or television, like I was saying before. The ability to watch sport using a VR headset or something.
Right, like
these are
front
exciting
seat,
things. Yeah.
court seats or whatever people are talking about. Like you can basically have an experience of being at an actual game of, you know, any kind of sport whatsoever. But yeah, I think the reason it's taken hold so much in games is because games are inherently an interactive medium, and VR is an interactive thing where you are in, you know, you're placed in a space to walk around and look around and just be living in that thing as opposed to just passively watching it, right?
Yes.
You are taking part as opposed to sitting back. So yeah, it's I'm very excited about it as well, but also I have to be wary of stuff because, as we've talked about previously in this episode, I'm one of those people who does get motion sick.
But they've solved it, they say. Sony say they've solved that issue with the Project Morpheus.
Right, so where do you want to start with this, Bally? Should we talk about the current VR projects and our thoughts and then pop into Nintendo? I think that's probably
Yeah, sure. I mean, the big news is that Sony have announced that Project Morpheus will become available in the first half of 2016.
It's actually the second half of 2016, I believe.
Really? I read first half.
Well, so we're going to trust either the BBC or Danny O'Dwyer. I'm going to trust Danny O'Dwyer.
Good, well said. You're right. I read the BBC report, and you're right. They will probably be behind GameSpot.
Yes. So yes. But anyway, it's coming out next year, right? Which I don't know. It seems pretty imminent. Like the thing with VR is we know it's been around for a while, and you know Oculus has been this thing, this amorphous thing that everyone's waiting on and potentially thinking about becoming a consumer product. But I don't think anyone was expecting it to happen this soon. Like I was thinking Oculus maybe 2017 is when it's going to be a consumer release. Like, and even then it's probably not going to be super advanced. But yeah, Sony seemed to be, at least on the design standpoint and the form factor area, they seem to be leading the way here, which is kind of cool.
I mean, they've got the OLED screen, I believe.
Yes.
And they've also ensured that it's going to be 120 frames per second.
Which I think everyone's going to try and shoot for because you need as much smoothness in the experience as possible.
And then on top of that, they've just got a really, really, I don't know how they've done it, but it's just a really sexy looking headset. Like it actually looks comfortable, and people have described it, you were saying Daniel Dwyer before, he described it as incredibly light.
Yes.
And that's a positive. Like it looks like it weighs an absolute ton, doesn't it?
It looks really stylish as well. You know, it looks really stylish. So, considering it's a thing that like is just mounted in front of your face, they've done a good job over at Sony with the design of it and the form factor. And yeah, I don't know. The problem with the Sony one is that, of course, it's going to be tied to their ecosystem, so it will only be available for PS4 games. So that's the potential fall through of this, is like you're going to have to choose a set which will fit your needs. And if you're someone who's like a multi-format person, then you have the option of going with the Oculus, which is on PC, or with Morpheus, which is going to be available on PS4, or even like Valve's one, which could be working with Steam and then not working with some other things. There's a lot of things to be worked out here, and there are many options available right now, so kind of a crowded marketplace, surprisingly.
It's just super exciting. And I mean, the big problem so far, and I guess you could say still, is sort of the reverse Reggie. There's no games to play. Like it's all
reverse
on about
Reggie.
Play the games. It's like, we can't, Reggie. There's no games to play. So yeah, the big problem has been, look, developers, we've got this new technology. Please make some games for it. And I mean, I was saying this to you earlier, NBZ, that Sony must have done some like deals with developers or something to ensure that it can come out in 2016, and they're actually going to have games to sell with this, with the I was going to say system, but it's not technically a system, is it? Because it's an
Peripheral, I
add-on.
guess we'd have
Peripheral.
to say.
Quite a pricey peripheral, shall we say? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
So,
Nintendo, king of the peripheral, so I wouldn't be surprised if that eventually happened. We'll get on to that, but I do agree with you. You need a software lineup, and right now there are a lot of experiences on VR, right? And a while ago, I think it was last year, there was, this Game of Thrones demo, which was someone would be at the wall and they'd stay like in the lift that goes up the wall and be able to look around at everything and see the whole world of Game of Thrones. And you're not really interacting much there. You're just kind of absorbing and living in a world. And at the moment, that's what the focus is on those kind of things. But there was a really interesting demo that was shown at GDC that we watched in this video with Danny, a good old buddy from GameSpot, Danny O'Dwyer, this London heist thing where, he's basically finding himself in an area being attacked by people and like, grabbing guns and, having a more traditional game experience using the Move controller alongside the headset itself. So that's kind of the direction it looks like it's going in, I think.
And we should mention the other products that none of them have announced an official, consumer launch date. But there's obviously Facebook's Oculus Rift.
Yes,
and
indeed.
It's still uncertain when that's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think those guys really want to get it right. They were the first to market, really, in terms of, they had the Kickstarter, they were the initial VR race was started by Oculus, and they got bought by Facebook for $2 billion or something
it was
stupid.
$2 billion, I read, yeah.
Which is crazy, and it seems like they want to take their time, and I admire that hugely. The old Miyamoto quote pops up again and again, about delaying things and having them be good forever. And I think that Oculus, with that tact, is probably going to do pretty well. They have the backing of this giant corporation who can fund them endlessly. They have kind of the vision and the drive at the head of the company with Palmer Luckey, such a young guy, but he's clearly like very talented to have done this thing from basically starting from his bedroom to bring it to this insane like multi-billion-dollar enterprise. And I'm really interested to see if Oculus will have maybe Oculus will be like the first party of VR, where they have a lot of cool people that they've brought on board who are clearly going to be designing experiences tailored for that device, and I'm super fascinated to see what comes out of them. Most of all, and it's kind of the most open platform because it'll be available on PC. It's kind of easily moddable as far as people can say, and the developer kits are out there. More people have access to Oculus, I'd say, than any other one of these because they were available on Kickstarter. So I think
and you can go on like their website right now and get one for like $300-400 or something. I think they've got
I think you can
kits.
buy the DK2 is the most recent one, which has the HD display on it.
There's a ton of hoops you still have to jump through in order to get one, and there's like certain things you're allowed to and not allowed to do with them, I believe. But yeah, really fascinating when it's going to be launched for just general consumers.
Yeah, it is.
And then there's sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that Valve is very
absolutely.
recently just announced theirs at GDC, and people were kind of talking before about how Valve had the thing where they were, we're not actually doing any headset, don't listen to that, that's nonsense, and then they come out and announce one anyway. It's like, well, okay, Valve, sure.
And it's
sure,
with
just do
HTC, isn't it?
Yeah, it seems like they're partnering with them to
Vive.
make this one.
Vive?
And yeah, something I don't know how to pronounce that thing. Lviv. It's like life, I guess. Alluding to like the Vita, I guess. Wouldn't want to go after the unsuccess of that system, of course. But trying to brand something. And I heard a quote from Gabe Newell, of course. The founder CEO of Valve, that he wants this headset to be 100% able to not cause sickness. Basically,
they want you, NBZ.
They want me to use this thing and not get sick using it, and that's his thing that he's thrown down. And I'll take him up on that challenge. I'll see.
But
see
it might require a lie down after.
Yeah, it might. And I think what Valve are doing is similar to what Sony are doing with the Move, where they have, obviously, Sony are using that kind of motion controller to simulate your hands, but I think they're doing something a little bit more complicated with theirs. I haven't looked too deep into it, but it seems that it is going to make it more immersive in terms of full body movement within a VR space. And that's the thing that people need to nail down, because it's great having the headset and everything, but if you're in a world and you can't like see your arms and move them around and have it feel natural, that's a problem.
There's
and
a word for it that I can't remember, but it's like an actual
it's some
scientific
sort of cognitive
thing.
dissonance or something, where you see a thing in front of you but it's not actually connected to the real world, and so that in a way can cause sickness.
You can actually manually do it with a mirror yourself. There's actually I saw this at like a little science museum in Edinburgh, and basically, yeah, you have a mirror and a pole, and you have to hold the pole, and the pole extends to the other side, but you move your head so you can only see one side of the mirror, and then you're looking at a reflection of your left hand pretending it's your right hand, and then you have to remove your right hand from the pole, and you get this weird sensation. It's really hard to describe, but it's exactly the same as VR. It's this idea that your hands are doing something different to what you think they're doing.
Yeah,
it's weird,
and it can create this just strange out of body thing. Neither of us have tried VR, unfortunately, yet, so we can't really, I guess, talk about that subject too much. But I know that it's a phenomena that
very
occurs.
keen to try it though.
Absolutely, I'm very keen. And
so
I guess,
I was going to move on to saying, what is the big role that Nintendo can play in this whole scenario?
Well, Bally, Nintendo, for all intents and purposes, were on the ground floor with VR before anyone else, with our good friend, the Virtual Boy.
What a system.
What a cracking system. That didn't work out too well, of course. Very famous failure for Nintendo was the Virtual Boy. Technology back then just wasn't where it needed to be, and quite rightly so. The VR stuff they were trying to push was, it was innovative and interesting, but it just didn't work with what they had to work with, and that's kind of, it's kind of a thing where I feel maybe Nintendo are a little bit afraid with VR, because it is this big black spot on their record. Gunpei Yokoi, who was one of these key founding members, invented the Game Boy essentially, and a really smart guy, was pretty much shamed as a result of his involvement in creation of the Virtual Boy, to the extent where I believe he kind of left the company and had some kind of bad things happen to him because it was so terrible. And you do kind of get a sense that maybe Nintendo are a little bit afraid of being haunted by their past with VR, with the Virtual Boy. What do you think, Bally?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and I mean, you were talking earlier that what on earth would Nintendo do with it? Because almost all the VR examples we've seen so far have been first-person experiences, and you made the very, very important point that Metroid Prime is really the only series Nintendo has ever really made that is first-person.
Yeah, and everything else is, it's a traditional video game in the sense that 2D platformers and puzzle things and obviously 3D action games and all these different genres, but most of the time Nintendo steer clear of first person, and it marks them out from the industry oftentimes. And when they do it, like with Metroid Prime, they do it very differently and take a different approach to it. But I do kind of question what is the role for VR with Nintendo IP, and whether will we see a first person platformer on the scale of a Mario? Is that the next evolution of a Mario game, to go first person with the platforming? Because that could, I don't know how that would work in a VR world and how disorienting it would be, but if you're going to have the abilities that Mario has to jump as high and to do as much acrobatics that he does in a first person perspective, it could, besides the point of trying to make people not feel ill, just make people feel ill anyway because of what you're doing, right?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, and the thing that Nintendo never do is they never do the predictable. And if everyone's going along with virtual reality, then the predictable would be that Nintendo would go along with virtual reality. And history has proven that they just don't follow trends. Like everyone obviously predicted that the successor to the Wii was going to be an HD Wii, but no one really predicted that it would have this gamepad attached.
Now, I'm going to take issue with you here, Bally, on them not following trends, because I think that with their last two systems, they have specifically followed trends, and to some degree it hasn't worked out for them.
With pads.
Initially, with 3DS, they followed the trend of 3D. That fizzled out very quickly, and at this point, 3D isn't a huge selling point of the system. They obviously have done stuff with it with the new 3DS, but 3D was a thing that they chased and went away very quickly. And secondly, with the Wii U, the idea of a tablet controller, right, and following the iPad and chasing that. And yes, they have followed trends, but I don't think it's worked out for them. So what I will agree with you is that they probably won't follow this one, at least initially, because of, you know, what has happened in recent history with them. But it'll be interesting to see, no doubt, if they do pick up the torch.
Yeah, and it's going to be fascinating, really fascinating, because these VR launches are going to happen around about the same time as where the Wii U is going to come to its natural, end.
Its end, yeah.
And it's going to be a case of, right, this is what all the other companies are bringing to the table. Nintendo, it's your turn. And there's so much chat about whether it's going to be handheld or home console or a combination of the two, and then throw into the mix VR related stuff. Like you said earlier, they did bring back 3D in a big way with the new 3DS. Is that something that they're going to try and keep going with? It's really, I don't know.
Well, Nintendo have great stock in stereoscopic 3D, and that's a big part of VR itself, so they were ahead of the curve on that one in the stereoscopic display that the 3DS uses. So they certainly, have the chops for it with the technology, and they've had experience dealing with a failed VR thing before. The stars may line up, Bally, I don't know, but it's a question, again, Nintendo, will they follow the pack, or will they go and do their own thing? And as we have said, that history has proven, they do their own thing majority of the time, and I don't know, it doesn't seem like something that they will go after, but then there's the risk they'll be left behind even more so, and they are behind as it is. Can they risk that? Who knows? It's a tough call to make, but
I'm sure
really
it's being discussed as we speak in the Nintendo Japanese boardrooms.
Oh, I'm sure many old men are making many ill-informed decisions based on numbers alone.
Yes,
and that would not surprise me. But then again, it's pretty much every corporation in the world, so not anything too surprised there. So yeah, is there anything else that we want to close here talking about VR?
I think so. I think that's a brief summary of where we are at with VR, and I'm sure it'll come up in future episodes.
It has to be. I just think it's so cool that we are living in an era where this kind of like future technology is becoming real.
It's exciting.
It's like we live in this kind of technological era of such crazy things happening. We're barreling closer and closer to that Star Trek future of the holodeck and all these crazy things, and this is the first step there, and it's very exciting, very exciting. So there you have it. It's VR. Well, Bally, I think that is the end of the show for this week. But before we go, we have a few things to talk about. Most notably, as I said at the top of the show, an announcement regarding the future of this podcast.
I think everyone's panicking right now, aren't they?
Look, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing whatsoever. So, Bally, why don't you lift the curtain on what we are planning here?
Sure. Thank you for giving me this privilege.
Of course.
We have decided to rebrand our podcast. So we're going to change the name, and we're going to change up a few things. We're going to keep the format of the show the same, but we just felt that our name and our brand, it wasn't fulfilling the two main things we wanted to fulfill, and those were the fact that we wanted to make sure that our name and our brand made it clear that we were a podcast. We felt that Now You're Playing with Power, it doesn't really doesn't really sound a lot like a podcast, perhaps. I mean, it's quite Nintendo, but it's not particularly podcasty.
It's quite a specific reference as well.
Yes.
And I think it brands as quite niche in many senses.
And secondly, a big problem with Now You're Playing with Power is that the actual word Nintendo isn't incorporated into this idea of our podcast. So we wanted something that incorporated this idea of podcast and this idea of Nintendo. So yeah, the new name, shall I just say
Drum roll.
Drum roll. The new name of our podcast is going to be This Nintendo Life. Now, some of you might absolutely love that name initially. Some of you are thinking, what the hell does that mean? For those that don't know, it's playing with the name of the most popular podcast on iTunes, which is, of course, This American Life. We wanted something that would appeal to podcast listeners and marry that with a podcast about Nintendo. So we really hope that, This Nintendo Life will work going forwards. And alongside that branding, we're going to get a new thumbnail, which we will reveal next time. And there's loads more stuff. NBZ, do you want to keep going?
Well, yes. Aside from that, we on the YouTube version of the show, we will have new artwork as well, which will go alongside the thumbnail on the iTunes version. Worked with a fantastic graphic designer on that, and we'll be talking about that more next time. But it looks fabulous, and I hope you guys will appreciate it. It's a good thing, and makes us stand out, hopefully, from the crowd on that iTunes stuff. We're also going to change our intro music. We haven't talked about changing our outro music yet, Bally. We love that Pirates of the Caribbean, but we may have to change that up as well. We'll see about that. But we, as far as this goes, we want to make this kind of fresh and do something new. So we're going to have a different kind of musical introduction, and I guess the rest of the show is going to stay pretty similar. We're going to have our 3 segments every week as per usual, but we're also going to try and get some guests on, and that is a big push for us, I think, this year. We said last year that we wanted to have more voices on the show, and we're going to try and line up a few of those this year, and hopefully 2015 will be when we expand a bit, get to know some more podcasters around the internet, and hopefully, get some interaction going, some social stuff, and it's always good to have, a difference of opinion from across the seas or from, anywhere else. So that's the thing that we're going to be looking to do.
And we're also going to be launching a new Twitter account as well as a new email. So definitely look out for that Twitter account. We're gonna follow quite a few of you out there. So look out for us, and yeah, give us a follow.
Absolutely. We will we'll give you the names for both of those next time. For the time being, if you want to send us emails, send them to nyppquestions@gmail.com. But next time, we will give you the new email address and then send all the stuff there for the time being. We still have a few emails lined up, but as soon as those are cleared out, we will be starting to use the new email address, and yeah, we'll be good to go from there. So wow, I think that's pretty much it on the rebrand side, Bally. Is there anything else that we need to mention here?
I don't think so. I just really hope everyone is okay with this change, and it's a positive.
The show isn't changing. The show itself is staying as it is always. Me and Bally talking about Nintendo. We're just, we're looking after our front end and future-proofing, I think. Future-proofing our show.
Yes.
For some good stuff coming up. So we're excited to do that. We'll probably talk about iTunes and iTunes reviews next time, because that will be a good thing to help us push forward with this as well. But we'll let you know when the time to fire on that is good, and do keep an eye on everything. But yeah, I guess we'll close the show out in our traditional fashion. So, Bally, where can you be found on the internet so people can keep up with us and the goings on?
On Twitter, you can find me at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN 91. And that is also my name on the Miiverse. See, this is the problem with playing on the tube, I should say, in London, is I can't post onto the lovely Miiverse. But
gutted.
We'll see. I'll try and get a few posts up there on Miiverse. So yeah, do give me a follow.
Excellent. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Lordnbz, and Miiverse is the same. That's Lordnbz, one word, no spaces, because I run words together like I mean it. And yeah, I don't know what I've been posting on Miiverse. I was doing a lot with Circle of the Moon, and then it kind of dropped off. But I'm sure I'll be back there as always. Miiverse is a foul temptress. She'll, rein you back in now and again.
Everyone loves a bit of Miiverse.
Absolutely. Of course, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes. That is even more pertinent this time because it means that you will get the brand new episode when we rebrand our show without even knowing it. It'll just pop up there and you'll be like, holy crap, it's a new...
Oh my god,
I'm this Nintendo Live. It just, yeah, it's changed. So that's a great thing to do. Go and subscribe on iTunes. We always appreciate that. And I think that's pretty much us.
I think so.
Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. We will return in 2 weeks' time with a brand shiny new episode of this podcast under a different name, but still the same. And with that rhyme, I think it's time to close the show out. So thank you very much, as always, everyone, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
The musical interludes used in today's show were the title screen music from Mario vs. Donkey Kong, copyright 2004 Nintendo, and Fight On from Gunman Clive 2, copyright 2015 Horberg Productions.
I only realised last week someone tagged me in one of those Follow Friday things.
Yeah.
I thought it was something Final Fantasy related.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah.
God damn it, Bally.
I still don't fully understand Follow Friday. Did someone just say Follow Friday and then
The
tags
concept
all the people they
concept is you're telling your followers, hey, here are some people I follow who I think are really cool. Maybe go follow them.
Oh, well, thank you, people who tagged me in that.
Yeah, there you go. You're assuming that I'm going to use this now, aren't you?
No.
God damn it, Bally. You can't meta
Can we
game!
start the podcast?
You can't meta game the stinger! You can't meta game the stinger! I control the stinger! I am the sting master. And I'll sting you.
Sting-tastic.